obviously indicative of like having a disdain for women. You know, the way they describe it, it's like, oh, you know, what's the first mission going to be? Like folding laundry? Shut up. It's like, well, I mean, maybe they have a point, you know, if they're calling you sexist.
How are you today? How are you doing?
I'm good. It's my day off, so.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
It's one of my many days off.
Yeah.
Well, excellent. So YouTube's not your full-time job.
No,
So, okay.
I used to be like a YouTube NEET, but now
Okay.
I'm not. I'm
Interesting.
a postal worker at this point, so.
Interesting, and we'll
That's
get
what I
into
do.
that. We'll get into that. But first thing I want to do, you know, I'm bringing you on because you followed me on Twitter. And that was kind of a surprise to
Yes.
me because I looked at your profile page and I was like, oh, this guy's got some clout. And then I looked at your YouTube page and I'm like, oh, this guy's really got some clout. Almost 300,000 YouTube subscribers is not a small feat. So congratulations on that first and foremost, my friend.
Thank you.
No, absolutely not a small feat at all. So I brought you on because you said that my takes were based, and I love to have my my feet licked. So that's very nice of you. But the secondary reason I brought you on is because the basic theme of this conversation is going to be gaming and politics. Because I want to know how politics has kind of influenced your content, if at all. If it hasn't, that's fine. But that's kind of the theme. So go ahead and give us like your name, your YouTube handle, kind of the content that you do, and then maybe a little bit about your political stances.
All right. I don't know. My cam is on if you want to put that on there.
Oh,
if not,
absolutely.
it's cool.
No. Perfect. Hold on.
So while you do that, I guess I'll summarize what I do and who I am and what I am and such.
Yeah, for sure.
So basically put, I mean, like I'm a Rockstar Games YouTuber. I'm known for making videos primarily about the game Bully. Contrary to the name of the game, it's actually like a video game with an anti-bullying message.
Mhm.
And it's something, you know, politics and video games have both influenced me a lot over the years. It's, you know, and also comedy, like comedians like Doug Stanhope and George Carlin, I think have played a little bit of a role in like how I am in videos sometimes. Way over the top, you know. Yeah, like kind of like cynical. But as for, see, it's kind of like an open question. It's difficult for me to just like jump right into it. But my YouTube handle is SWEGTA, SWEGTA. And I've been doing this for, let's see, I've been doing YouTube videos. Oh, I joined YouTube in 2006 and I had like a different account and I got banned for being, you know, like a 9-year-old posting System of a Down songs. So
nice.
My actual YouTube career started in like 2016, I think. That's like when I went all in. I graduated with a certificate and such in computer and communicative technology, but I had jack shit fucking interest in any of that. So I got a job, and then I was like, this job thing sucks. I'm just gonna do YouTube. And I did for like, I don't know, 6 or 7 years. And then I kind of got sick of it, and I was like, okay, well, I should get some experience. So I have a job now. That's what I do. So I'm not really active at this point on YouTube. I do plan on making my comeback. I am on indefinite hiatus, so eventually I'll make my return.
I did notice your last upload was 6 months ago, and I was like, "What's up with that?"
It's been a minute.
Yeah, I do have at least one person in chat who mentioned they watched you back in 2018, though. Tame Pepper over here, so we got a couple of fans here. I'm not the biggest content creator myself, but we're on the way up. Just to brag a little bit at you, I just got back 2 weeks ago from Los Angeles, where we filmed a Jubilee Middle Ground shoot. So you can, and I was actually on there with Destiny, if you can believe it, of all people.
Oh, so what was the topic?
It was black conservatives versus white liberals. It should be. It was very interesting while I was on set, and it would definitely be an interesting final cut. I hope that they did not cut my hilarious jokes.
Hopefully not.
But anyway, this is about you, not me. So,
yes.
So anyway, so you kind of gave us a synopsis of you and what kind of content you do, and I did notice it was mostly Bully. I've only ever watched Oni play that game. Can you tell us a little bit more about that game? I don't know much about it.
Well, essentially, like it takes a lot of inspiration from various media. Like I think a little bit of the Warriors. You know, even literature like Catcher in the Rye. Let's see. So essentially, you know, you're like this 15-year-old kid who's dropped off at this like the shittiest fucking school you can imagine. Bullying is rampant. teachers are, horrible. Some of them are just straight up
Just like in
abusive
real
towards
life.
students and shit.
Just like in real life.
Yeah, basically. It's funny you say that because there was actually a line in the game by a character who's like a minor little background character, but they have a line where like they say, this town is a bit of it's like a microcosm of society as a whole. And I feel like that's apropos because it really is. Like if you actually look at the social hierarchy in Bully, and I did a video collaboration with Middle Side Topwise. I should probably give them a little bit of a shout out. I don't know are you familiar with MSTW?
I can't say that I am. I wish I knew that I wish that I knew more gaming YouTubers, but I just don't.
They're actually a little bit in between. They do a lot of video essays and stuff. They have like a far left kind of perspective on media, like Rockstar Games and music and films.
Very nice.
They've made a really solid video series called "What Rage Against the Machine Was Talking About." That I highly recommend.
Beautiful. Because I remember there was a lot of outrage over that.
Yes. But yeah, I did a video collaboration with them regarding Bully. In the video, I mentioned that like if you look at the social hierarchy of the game, like you'll see that essentially to climb your way up, you have to be like the most abusive, self-centered piece of shit possible. Not at all like real life, of course.
Yeah, of course. Nothing like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know, if you just look at the game itself, like it's difficult for me to summarize it in words because it's something that you have to experience. It's like if I could tell you as much as I possibly could about the game itself, but unless you experience it for yourself, you're not going to be able to like really infer what I'm saying.
Right.
So I highly recommend checking it out yourself. It's a bitch to get fucking working on Windows 10 or 11 or any modern operative systems, but
yeah. The modern operating systems kind of suck, but
yeah, I think I said operative systems instead of operating. But
yeah, we all know what you meant.
There is a community-made patch because Rockstar they're not going to bother fixing the old games because there's a community-made patch that actually makes it compatible with most modern-day computers. So you could check that out if you feel like it. But yeah, I highly recommend it. It's basically like GTA, but in a more condensed kind of setting. So there's way more attention to detail. All the characters in the game, they have different unique personalities and appearances. Unlike, say Grand Theft Auto, where like you have, 1,000 generic civilian NPCs. So even like the minor characters you walk by, I mean, like they all have different distinct personalities and traits that really set them apart and make them interesting and give them backstories and shit.
Oh, that is interesting.
I have a deep appreciation for this game because it was like one of the first video games that I ever beat. So I came back to it years later, beat it again, and then later it came out on like Windows. So I got it, started making videos, and then after that it just kind of snowballed and I amassed an audience somehow of like 200 and something thousand people.
Very nice. Well, you must have something to your content that's good because 200,000 people seem to enjoy it quite a bit. So as far as Bully goes, so I can kind of see how then that game would kind of get you into politics, right? Because you don't really do a whole lot of political content. I saw maybe like 2 videos where you talk about Rockstar and like their greediness and especially with like the new GTA game that nobody wanted, the remake, or was it the remaster or whatever?
It's some bullshit. It's like, there's like 10 more pixels per texture, like, and they re-release it. It's like some insignificant bullshit like that. It's
I remember
not at all necessary.
I never watched it or played it, but I did watch some of it, but it looked worse than the original because the original, it's like it's from that time, it's from that era. It's supposed to kind of look like that, and everything kind of did, and there's a nostalgia factor. But the new one is like,
oh, you mean definitive edition?
Okay, so wait, what did they remake? Was it Rockstar? Was it GTA San Andreas?
Yeah. So okay. The 3D era trilogy, like San Andreas, Vice City, and 3, I think. Gotcha.
But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that was a huge disaster. And I think a big part of that was like they knew there would be like this huge backlash. I really think they were cognizant of that because they had like these 3 massive games, which like, you know, even today, I mean, like remastering one of them is a huge feat for even just like a competent studio. They
Huge
found
feat.
this like
Sorry, what?
little.
I'm so sorry. They found what?
They found a huge feat. So you know, even assigning like a big studio to, you know, do this kind of project is a daunting task, I'll say. So
Yeah.
you know, basically what they did was like they found this little like a semi-indie studio that really only had a background in porting games to iOS, and that was about it. And they're like, okay, we're gonna have you remaster these like 3 huge classic titles, and we're gonna give you like a really limited amount of time and resources to do this. And you know, we're not gonna really like back you up in any significant way. And so, of course, like, you know, they rush the project. So it ends up sucking ass. It's just bad. And then when the backlash comes out, they're like, you know, we're cutting ties with this studio. They are not up to par. It's like, well, how do you possibly expect them to accomplish any of this? And then the thing that really bothered me is like I kept seeing people on social media saying that like it's the studio is woke. It's because it's woke. They drop, you know, they're so focused on inclusivity. I saw people, they're like, look at how woke the studio is, and they showed like a picture of like the team, you know, smiling and, you know, posing for pic, and it's like there's like one black guy in like the background in like a doorway, you know, you can barely see him, and people are like, forced diversity.
I don't know, man. Black people existing is pretty woke to me.
Yeah, you know, people say the same thing when it comes to like GTA 6 having a female protagonist. They're like, playing as a woman, this is like forced diversity. It's like, how many Grand Theft Auto games have come out where like you play as a dude?
Also, wouldn't that make it far more interesting? Like, it's so much, the expectations societally are so much different for women, especially in a world like GTA where everything's exaggerated to the 9th degree. It's like, that would make so much more interesting gameplay, in my opinion, and they just forego that because, I don't want to play as a woman. It's woke. It's woke. It's just so stupid. I don't know.
Yeah. The funniest thing is like I kept, well, a couple of examples. One of them that I saw was like, you know, they're gonna call us sexist just because, you know, we don't want to play as a woman and do like stupid women shit. I'm like, that. I feel like that, like even if they made that presumption, like they'd be justified, because just like the way you're going about this, it's obviously indicative of like having a disdain for women. Because it's it you know, the way they describe it, it's like, oh, you know, what's the first mission going to be, like folding laundry? Shut up. It's like, well, I mean, maybe they have a point, you know, if they're calling you sexist.
Yeah,
I feel like they'd actually like be justified in that. The second thing that I saw, I guess like the fact that like so few people really take this shit seriously kind of bothers me. There was like this kind of like viral post that was of course like a 4chan green text that you know, made the rounds on Twitter, where somebody talked about like Red Dead Redemption 2, and they're like, oh, you know, you play as this you know, cowboy in, you know, the 1800s, and yet, you know, he's not a racist, he's not a sexist, he's not, you know, he doesn't hate Jews, you know, and this kind of thing. And that was basically like their way of criticizing the game for like not being true to the era it takes place in. And it's like, well, I mean, even if that was like prevalent, even if those kind of like opinions were abundant at the time, you know, you still had people who didn't fall into those kind of categories, people who like didn't believe that shit, because eventually, you know, fewer people did.
Right.
And, you know, like what's really like the point being made here? Like, you know, unless I get to play as a like super Nazi, like this game is beneath me, and I just have a disdain for the developers behind it because, you know, they don't like racism. It's like, okay, well, maybe that's a good thing.
Right, exactly. Yeah, so as far as like playing as a woman goes, or like woke video games in general, it's just like, like I said, you're just foregoing so much potential good experience. You know, like, what if the first mission were fold laundry? I feel like, honestly, that'd be a great statement on like the expectations that are set forth for women, you know what I mean? And then you kind of go into like, oh, well, you could just make it an overt girl boss game almost, you know, why not? Go have fun with it. You know, make her a fucking CEO, slay queen, drug dealer, cartel threatener. Like, just seriously, just completely girl boss it up. That'd be insane. I would love that. Yeah. And people just can't see that. They think diversity is like some woke left thing. And another thing that I wanted to bring up is like back in those days. So I'm a big One Piece fan, right? I don't know how much you know about the show, but basically it's just a bunch of pirates.
Jack shit.
Yeah, it's fine. It's just a bunch of pirates. Some of them have superpowers. It's fine. The point is, the show's real big on like diversity. It's one of their big points. They even get into like queer stuff too. It's great. And that's how Oda, the writer, took inspiration from original pirates. Those were the Wild West boys of the blue sea, right? So like there were so many people in the Wild West that like there were pockets of like queer inclusive spaces where like they just were the most degenerate, cross-dressing, ass fucking, like all of it. Like they were just like going ham. And people don't know that queerness. Like I feel like a lot of these people forget that being a, like anti-authority is a queer ideal. That's huge in queer spaces, and queerness is a huge part of anti-authoritarianism historically.
Yeah, and I was just gonna say, like,
Yeah.
it's such a prevalent thing in history, and even today. I mean, like, if you just look at what is it, the pink pistols? You know, you have. Are you familiar with what I'm referring to?
No.
Okay, it's essentially like a gun organization run by queer people
Oh.
and like trans people. So it's funny to me because like when you see, and I'm sure like you've noticed this on social media, when you see people, when you see like queer people or just like marginalized people in general, showing off their guns, like, you know, straight white dudes normally do, or usually do in those kind of pictures. I mean, it's like, you know, maybe like a black queer woman or something. They're like, what the f is this? What's going on? It's like, aren't you in favor of gun rights? Aren't you strongly in favor of like people having the right to bear arms? But as soon as like a gay or trans person does it, it's like, this is a threat to society. And it just goes to show that like this pseudo rebellious attitude that a lot of conservatives have is just that. It's just a farce. They don't actually believe in that. It's just like, you know, rights for me, but not for thee.
Oh, it's all optics. Like, I grew up conservative, so I can tell you it's all optics. Like, I would fantasize about saving a gas station that was being held up by some dude who can't afford, like, potato chips, so he has to steal them at gunpoint from the fucking clerk, and just, like, holding a gun to his head and be like, you really want to do that, buddy? You want to go, punk? You know, shit like that. It's just a brain disease. And it's completely optics-based, because... like I said, you know, great example, Punisher logo. I see that all over conservatives shit. They have it on their trucks. They got it tattooed on their
cops
assholes.
as well.
Right. So cops too. And it's like cops have the Punisher logo. It's like, this is like a mouse having a fox logo, you know? Like,
you know what?
Like,
It reminds me of like, there was like this clip of like a Trump rally, like a MAGA thing where they had Killing in the Name by Rage Against the Machine blaring in the background, and people were like waving the American flag and a bunch of white people dancing. It's like, how do you not comprehend what this song is about? Like, what do you think the lyrics are about? Like,
what was the song again?
You know, Killing in the Name by Rage Against the Machine.
Right. One of the few songs I know because I played Guitar Hero. Anyway.
Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to provide that as an example because, as you say, I mean, like to a lot of people in, you know, this kind of side of the political aisle, it's all about just optics and I'd say aesthetics. Like they like the idea of coming off as like this, I'm this rogue individualist rebel. But then in actuality, it's like, well, you're not in favor of that because like one of the most individualistic things you can do, one of the most rebellious things you can do, in my opinion, is just be different, not just, you know, conform to what people tell you should be or should look like. And I think like a queer or trans person is probably like the prime example of that.
Absolutely. I mean, another part of that is a lot of these guys have never tried a dress on. They've never tried makeup on. I have, okay? I thought I looked great. I wouldn't do that daily, mainly because it's so much effort, and the people who do that daily, they clearly are, you know, they clearly enjoy what they do, because putting on makeup is dog shit. I hate every part of it, even if I look fantastic. So, you know, there's got to be something to it. But yeah, you're right. Like expression like that, they just hate individual expression, and then they turn around and call us communists and say that we just want everybody to be the same. And it's like, well, no, you're a literal white ethno state. You want a white ethno state. Like you literally want everybody to like live in their little suburban box with the 2.5 kids, the dog, and the white picket fence, and all have a certain melanin level. You know.
Yeah, they want to go back to an era that like they just never define. It's always some vague kind of like, you know, 30s through 70s kind of thing, but like it's never specified like this is the ideal societal model that I strive for. Well, because if they actually told you that, they would have to specify like, okay, well, it has to be like 98 at least % white. You know, and at that point, it's like, okay, yeah, people are going to be turned off by that idea.
Right, and they can never explicitly say that. But and you're right, it's like a vague gesturing. It's virtue signaling almost, or what? Not virtue signaling. It'd be like nostalgia signaling. You know, remember when times were better? Remember when you could afford a house on $2 an hour? You know, and really, when they harken back to the good old days, they're just talking about like labor relations with the workplace, and they never, ever, ever actually push for the things that made those times even remotely good. It's only the things that made them bad. You know, it's like you don't actually want to go back. You just want certain fascistic elements of that time period back. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's fun.
No, it's very fun. So, I guess so real quick, I don't know if you mentioned specifically, like, how do you identify yourself or label yourself politically? And then how do you feel like that's influenced your content over the years? Because I know that you've been uploading since at least 8 years ago, from what I saw.
Yeah, I've had this channel since 2010 or 2011. Mm-hmm. But how I identify, I'd say like, I mean, I've taken like political tests, but I mean, you know, they're done by an AI, so I can't really like put too much credence into that. But I'd say like the results that I've gotten have said alt-right. No, I'm just kidding. They've said that I'm a libertarian socialist.
Very nice. That's what I get as well. I don't really. I try to use the word progressive more than anything. I usually say leftist as well. I used to identify as a socialist. I still will in certain contexts, but you know, certain labels like that just turn people off. So progressive is what I go with.
Yeah, it's like I had a conversation with a friend of a relative of mine, and they went on. They're like, you know, the thing that I hate the most is just fucking socialism. I'm like, okay, before we proceed in this conversation, I'm gonna have to have you define socialism, because like colloquially, it can mean many things. It can mean just like vague lefty kind of woke stuff, or it can be like actual socialism, like, you know, the means to production and such, like the public ownership of that and workers' rights and yada yada. We can get into that and define that if you want, but you know, before we do anything in this conversation, I'm going to need you to actually tell me what you mean by socialism. And as soon as I did that, it's like, well, yeah, like the left thing. Like, okay, so not socialism then, just like liberal bad, basically. They're like, yeah.
Oh, it's all about owning the libs, yeah.
Yeah, not knowing what terms mean to pwn the libs. It's a good tactic.
Well, and the fact that they like group us all in as liberals says a lot. I don't personally care. It's not like it triggers me. If somebody calls me a liberal, I'll own it happily. But there are distinctions, important ones, and they just don't understand that.
I don't know. It fucking bothers me when they say, because I've seen people say this in my YouTube chat. Like occasionally people will ask me like, what are your thoughts on guns, SWEGTA? And I'll give them, and then somebody's like, fucking lib. I'm like, ew, don't know. I'm more left than that. Stop.
You mean you don't want my kid to have a gun while he's in math class? Excuse you. What if a mass terrorist from the Middle East tries to come in and make them worship Allah? Then what? Then you won't be smiling. That's what I tell you. What I say. Anyway.
Well, that's fair enough. Yeah. I've changed my mind.
See, I knowed it. Anyway.
Yeah.
But going back to like your specific political content, how do you feel like politics or your views have influenced your content, and has your content influenced your political views at all?
Well, I think the content has influenced my views, and my views have influenced my content, because the content that I cover is, you know, mainly video games by Rockstar Games, and they do tend to have kind of like a liberal, edgy bent to them, at least like in terms of writing. So, it's not something that I always agree with, but it's something that has given me a little bit more perspective on different social issues, or at least like the absurdity in those issues. Um, as for like how my views have affected my content, I'd say that I'll kind of sprinkle it in my video sometimes. Like, I'll just like there's a video that I did not too long, well, actually long ago, because it's been half a year, but there's a video that I put out where I talked about like little hidden details in Bully that I've noticed that like people haven't covered yet. And so one of them was like there was like a magazine or something in the game, like a little prop somewhere. Like it's like here's a fashion rag, telling women how to dress and shit. And I basically just said like I pointed out like the absurdity of it. I basically said telling women how to dress, via cheap pieces of fucking plastic and paper. Yeah, that seems healthy. So I'll do stuff like that. I'll make little like snide remarks that give people a little bit of insight into what I think about certain issues and stuff. But it's seldom that I ever make a video that is like overtly political. I think the best example of that would be like the transphobia in GTA 5 video, which is, that's one of the main things I'm known for at this point.
Really? I don't think I've watched that one.
Yeah, so I basically, to summarize the video, I provided some examples of, like kind of genderqueer representation in Rockstar Games, and how in GTA 5 it basically comes down to like T-slur, LOL,
Yep.
And the point that I made was like, I'm not against edgy jokes or like, necessarily this type of humor. What I'm against is like the inconsistency in these games. Because if you look at like different groups of people, like Rockstar tends to have like way more nuanced and mature approach when it comes to making fun of different people. When it comes to like trans people, it's just like slurs and caricatures, and that's it. So I'm like, okay, well, imagine if like you did this with like black people or something. That'd be fucked up. And people would recognize it. Well, most people at least would recognize it as being fucked up. But yeah, when it comes to like this other group of people that is like, continuously struggling to even attain the right to fucking exist, then it's like, no, just go all in. Hands, gloves off, just no limit at all, no filter. And people kept making the argument that it's like, well, they make fun of everybody. And I'm like, yes, I know. I acknowledged this in the video. The point is, it's not consistent. It's not like the same type of humor being done. One is actually has like different levels and gradients to it, and the other is just like, fuck you, you're weird.
Yep.
And that's it.
Yep. It's a matter of how you do it.
Yeah. So that's the main video that I'm known for. And a lot of people, even to this day, they're like, oh, you're like offended by these jokes. It's like, I'm not really. I just think that it's fucking weird how there's like this really big double standard depending on like how people in general view these kind of groups. Because
Well,
like
yeah.
if you were to go back, like if somehow fucking GTA 5 came out like in the 1800s, then instead of trans people being made fun of this way, it would have been like black people or something.
Yep.
So I'm just saying that like maybe maybe we should just have like the same standard for all of the groups that we make fun of. Maybe we should just like treat them equally. Maybe equality, right? Isn't that a good thing? Isn't that what we fucking all say we want?
Oh,
but then as soon as I make a video calling for it, people are like, "Oh, you're like a snowflake. You're a cuck. You're an SJW. Blah blah blah." And it's okay. Well, the conversation just fucking dies there.
Alice McGee in the chat said, I would have to see the jokes they make in the game. Women are also made fun of. And I'll let you talk on this too, but to my recollection, yes, women are made fun of. Yes, that's a problem. I don't think, now I don't play a lot of Rockstar games, but I don't think it's quite as bad as what they do with trans people, because women are still women, and trans people in those games are like just the ass of jokes, right?
Yeah, it all comes down to like, haha, men in dress and,
Yeah.
slurs. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I think what people fail to realize is if you make a joke and somebody's offended by it instead of laughing at it, there's a and I'm not saying it's automatically not funny. There are certainly prudes in every community. But there's a possibility that it's not funny, and you should maybe analyze, like, okay, am I actually making a joke here, Or is this equivalent to like what you might say, what like a sixth grader might say at the lunch table, you know? Oh, man in dress, haha, hairy leg and big jaw, so funny, haha, facial stubble, it is funny, see? Like, that's child humor to me.
Yeah. I think a good hypothetical to kind of elucidate what the point of my video was would be like, say if like a comedian, a famous comedian comes out with a stand-up special, and they're like, this is like the, edgy kind of like I make fun of everybody special, and throughout like 80 minutes, they're like, they describe black people as like caricatures. They're like the violent criminal fucking ape, whatever, and they do all the racist caricature shit.
Yep.
And then, at the ass end of the stand-up special, they're like, oh, by the way, white people kind of suck at dancing, I guess. And that was it. And people were like, well, they make fun of everybody in the special, so whatever, what are you complaining about?
Oh, yeah. So exactly. So white's seen as the default, right? White man. White cishet man, I should say. So any other minority, you can just point out that they're that minority and idiots will laugh at it. That's the difference.
Yeah. Well, my point is kind of like, you viciously go after one group, and then when you make fun of another one, you're like way more nuanced and careful about it.
Yes.
It's like, well, what? Either if you're gonna do like this full-on edgy thing, like do that if you want.
Mm-hmm.
I don't give a shit. But if you're gonna do that with like one group and then like be super careful about like another one, then it's like, okay, well, you're not. That's a double standard. That's my issue. So if you want to make fun of somebody, like go right the fuck ahead. I mean, like I don't give a shit. But like maybe be consistent in the way by which you do that with other people as well.
Can you give the example of a video game or a TV show or otherwise of like a piece of media that did that well, in your opinion?
I could give you an example of like a stand-up that did that well, just off the top of my head.
Sure.
I think George Carlin has done a really fucking fantastic job at doing that.
I would agree with that.
He made fun of like, feminists and women and men and, conservative men and this like rugged kind of hyper masculine culture we exist in. So, whichever side of the political aisle you fall into, Carlin would have made fun of you, and he would have done so in like a witty, fucking nuanced way. So that's, the first example that comes to my mind. Again, I don't know I guess it counts as media. Yeah, I win. That's a good example.
Yeah, no, it is a good example because he would punch pretty much every direction. There was a lot of political messaging in what he was saying as well. It wasn't all stuff that I agree with, obviously, but his whole thing was edginess first, right? Like, we're going to be edgy. We're going to make fun of everybody. I mean, he legitimately said that, like, he didn't say, like, people who love their kids have a child fetish, but he did say the word child fetish about people who, like, are way overprotective of their kids. And I just think that's hilarious. And I know that, the Twitter account, Gays Against Groomers, by any chance?
Yes.
Lovely people.
I've seen it.
Yes, those lovely individuals.
I keep seeing it on, like, what is it? You have like two timelines on Twitter. You have one where like you follow people, and the other one where it's like, it keeps showing me like Gays Against Groomers. I've even seen like Nazi shit on there. It's like, we need to return to like ethnos. How, based on like what I follow like you and Vosh and like Nate Talks to You and Conyer and all kinds of people on the left. So like fantastic, it just seems people. Fucking they're the best people. Trust me, I know all people.
Especially that Alec Gunther guy. He's amazing. Anyway.
Oh yeah, he's based.
Thank you.
But
I mean,
I mean, like I see that on there too. Gays Against Groomers, I've seen that.
But I bring them up. No, you're fine. I bring them up because they posted a George Carlin bit about what was it? I can't remember what they posted exactly. But the fact that they were posting a George Carlin bit and being like, "Look, this guy's on our side." No, the fuck, he's not. No, he's not. Have you, like, I replied with that clip where they were like, you are obsessed with children, you have a child fetish, and it's not healthy. Because he was, like, talking about, the whole joke was, like, we need to bring natural selection back, which, obvious edgy joke. He doesn't really believe that. It was hilarious. But the whole idea is that they just don't let their kids have privacy, they don't let their kids take risks, they don't let their kids learn about shit, and it's like, that's exactly what Gays Against Groomers and their ilk are doing. They're trying to hyper shelter these kids and isolate them from any outside contact other than their family so that they can just be abused. And that's disgusting. And they're freaks and perverts, and I hate them so much. To my core, I hate them. So, yeah.
And it kind of goes back to like something that I've seen quite a bit is they oftentimes make the case that, you know, this queer movement is like targeting kids and preying on them. And it's like, how many times have we seen? Isn't it like statistically just more likely that like a Republican senator is going to molest somebody in a bathroom than it is like a trans woman doing it? Like, I think I've actually seen a study on that.
Oh, yeah. Do you know Shark 300 by any chance?
No.
Brilliant guy. Vosh, he's one of Vosh's favorite creators, if that says anything. He's a little bit more gentle than Vosh, I would say. He's not as edgy or abrasive, but he's so freaking funny. And he did a great video called... I want to say it's called Conservative Family Values. The thumbnail for it is just a little girl with like a hand covering her face, like her nose and her mouth and stuff, you know? It's a fantastic video, and I highly, highly recommend that if you want ammo against people who are like, these gays are grooming our kids. Yeah, bet. Like, there's an entire list that he goes through. He just lets it scroll of like all these conservative politicians. Yeah.
I'm gonna write down the name so I can check it out later. It was a Shark.
Shark, then the number 3, the letter O, and then the word 0. And actually, his editor is my sister, and she's in the chat.
Oh, cool.
So,
hi.
But he's great.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah.
But I've seen like a lot of conservatives do the same thing with posting Carlin clips. They're like, here's him making fun of feminists, and you know, if you actually look at the full context of that stand-up, like after making fun of feminists, he actually goes on to say, you know, in all fairness, I actually do think they sometimes make good points.
Yeah,
I think like they're actually correct on some of these issues. You know, maybe, maybe like a spokesman should be a spokesperson because, you know, we do think in language. So maybe it would be healthy if we actually abandon some of these, you know, terms that we have in favor of like more gender neutral ones. That's a point that he actually made right after he went after feminists. And it's fucking infuriating for me. By the way, is it okay if I cuss or should I?
Not at all. It's totally fine. It's totally fine.
Fucking A. Sweet.
Yep.
But it infuriates me to no end when I see people taking these kind of like Carlin clips and posting them and saying like, oh, he's on our side. And then if you actually like watch what happens right after the clip, it totally contradicts this narrative. And they're aware of it, but they just like choose to dismiss that and present it as something else. Because it's just like, well, you know, it makes my side look good, so I'm lying like a son of a bitch, but, you know, if it helps me make a point, it's all worth it. It's like, what does that say about the point you're making and the values you're defending?
Yeah, can you... Sorry, repeat that point one more time. I'm super ADHD right now.
Well, basically the point that I made is like they're being intellectually dishonest by posting these out of context clips in favor of like supporting their side instead of just actually like acknowledging that a comedian may beg to differ on them on like some social issue. Like,
right, like some hyper-feminist is like, we should say spokesperson instead of spokesman.
Yeah, so Carlin basically made the point that, okay, well, you know, I make fun of feminists, and there's a lot that you can make fun of them for, but at the same time, there are some points they made that are actually valid that I think have some value.
Another great example is Vosh was talking one time about how this conservative talk person, I can't remember who it was, some YouTuber, was like, they're worried about Band-Aid colors. The fact that the Band-Aid is called skin color, and it's beige, and it's for white people. And it's like, well, I mean, isn't that kind of a good point, though? Like, you know, if you're calling it skin color and then it's defaulting to white people, maybe that says something like there's a broader message there. I'm not saying that that's the biggest, most pressing concern that the working class American is going to be talking about in 50 years. But, you know, like, it's still a good point, you know?
I mean, I think we can multitask. I think we can address a lot of, you know, pressing issues and then at the same time tackle issues that maybe don't have the same level of priority. Like, why does it have to be one or the other? Why can't we, like... There's 8 billion people on this planet. I'm pretty fucking sure we can address all of these issues simultaneously. I think there's enough people to really, put enough thought into this so we can all figure this shit out.
No, absolutely. I mean, they don't want to figure it out, right? They have to have a punching bag, because if they don't, their whole narrative falls apart.
Yeah.
So,
I wish I had something else to add to that.
No, please. It's fine. It's a good segue. I wanted to get into, what was it? So we talked about like your politics and gaming. There was another point that I wanted to bring up, and I can't think of it right now. But I just had it.
Fuck.
Man. No, it's okay. I'll think of it.
All right. In the meantime, I'm gonna review this Red Bull that I've never tried.
Oh, sure, please do. I love energy drinks. Too much, actually.
Yeah. I mean, I deliver mail for a living, so I'm hooked on them.
I feel that. I'm a nurse, and these days I work a pretty laid-back job as a home care nurse. I just have one patient, but it used to be nursing homes, and man, did those take it out of me. Oy, oy, oy. Oh, I know what I was going to ask you.
Okay.
So, politics and gaming. We hear so much that games and media are being politicized. I remember people they still are, I shouldn't say I remember, they still are mauling over how we're politicizing Star Wars by putting black people and women in as some of the main cast. Notably speaking, war is in the title of the movies and the trilogy, or the media. And famously, wars are not political or anything. So, maybe they have a point, I guess.
And never mind like how, the dark side in Star Wars, they have like obvious Nazi symbolism in it.
Oh,
like,
yeah,
never pay no attention to that. That's apolitical. Nazis, they're not political.
Let me answer this real quick. Rocket League is very easy to begin playing and very hard to master. It is a very fun game. If you practice, you'll get good at it. I'm like decent at it. I'm okay. Not champion level or anything, but it's fun. That's what I'm playing right now.
It's also highly political.
It is highly political. So, where are trans Rocket League players? They need to be banned or something. So, I guess where do you feel? How do you feel about politics and gaming and how the rhetoric around that is right now?
I think politics and media has always existed.
So
this notion that video games are getting they've always been, well, maybe not always, maybe not Pong, but as soon as like people had the ability to tell stories in this type of media, it's obviously been influenced by the perspective of the people writing it. So just automatically, it's going to have some political bent to it. If you attack any kind of social issue or anything of that nature. So if you have a video game like, I don't know, Saints Row, like, people said that, Saints Row has gotten political. It's like, hasn't it always been? But even if you feel like it's getting political now, isn't it just more noticeable now because we're talking so much about politics and media? I feel like it's always been there.
No, it has. I agree. I tried to tell somebody. So I was talking. I'm again a big One Piece guy. So I was talking to somebody. I was in a comment section about a big thing recently was is Luffy a terrorist, right? And Luffy, because Hassan Piker said that Luffy's a terrorist because he's a pirate, right? So his whole shtick is he like told the world government, which is a real faction in the show, I am not going to listen to you. I am doing my own thing, whether you like it or not. And a lot of what he does, despite not being harmful to anybody, is objectively against the law. Like, he is breaking the law constantly. He declared war on the world government. He's a fucking terrorist. I'm sorry. And so people are, like, so caught up in this idea that terrorist equals bad. And they're not understanding that, like, One Piece is a hugely political show, as are many of the best shows that exist. I would say probably most of them, if not all of them. There are always political implications. Everything is political. Feeding children is political. Ask any conservative politician that wants to make sure children don't have free lunches in schools. Like, everything's
See, that's
political.
the thing. Like, as a Swede, like, I've lived my whole life in Sweden, mostly Stockholm, and some people think that I'm Canadian because of the way I speak or whatever, but I'm actually Swedish.
Anyone who's not American is the same, unless you're brown. But go ahead.
Okay. But I mean, like, as a Swede, like, I didn't find out about, people having to pay for school lunches in the United States until I was like 18. Like until I graduated, I was totally oblivious of that. And then I find out about that, and I'm like, okay, well, surely there has to be some kind of like alternative where it's like, okay, you can pay for this, like, you know, taste your variant of the school lunch, but really, like, you don't have to pay for it. You can get like this cheaper kind of bland goo instead.
Oh,
Not
yeah.
even that. It's like if you don't have the fucking money, you're just not gonna get any food.
The mystery soup.
Yeah, and it's just how the fuck, like the very same people who constantly go on about like how they want to protect kids and the well-being of kids, they're just like, yeah, but let them starve if their parents are poor, because commune.
Yeah, we the biggest threat, right? Communism is going to feed our children, and that's bad somehow. Somehow, you know.
It's fucking insane to me because, like, there was actually a point in my life where, like, the family that I grew up with, like, they went from being, like, upper middle class to just, like, scraping by. And there were actually, like, days where, like, I didn't have food at home. That just wasn't a thing. So I would show up at school, being totally exhausted and, maybe not malnourished, but, still, like, constantly hungry, getting tired, having headaches, that kind of thing.
Right.
And so, of course, teachers took notice of this, and so they gave me some food from the cafeteria. They were just like, "We have food. You can have some of the food." There was
freeloader.
Like, yeah,
these freeloading babies. God damn it.
Yeah, this fucking welfare child. Yeah.
Keep going.
But it's just how the fuck, like, if you have a resource and people are in dire need of it, and they are children, mind you. Take the thing and give it to the people who need it. Why is that a controversial thing? And again, like, until I was 18, I didn't know this was like even a point of contention in the US. I was totally unaware of that.
It's the whole moral.
As soon as I found out about that, I saw like an article on it. Like, should, school lunches be, covered by taxpayers? I'm like, isn't it? Wait.
Yeah.
What?
The only thing that's covered by taxpayers in this country is war and Elon Musk. That's about it.
And Wall Street.
On Wall Street. Yeah, all the things we don't like. But
yeah, it's like all of these things that people really despise and have no trust in, like government and rich people. Yeah, let's fund that.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's I hate when taxes come up because it's so complicated to navigate, especially with like right-leaning libertarians who like jerk off to the thought of never having to pay taxes ever again, and that's like their whole thing. I mean, I can't stand that. Like, I know it's so hard to navigate that, and I'm getting a little off topic, but I want to tell people, like, no, taxes are important. Like, if you like having roads, if you like having public services, we need those. But, like, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater and say, no, ditch taxes entirely, because I still like having public services. I want firefighters to show up if my house catches on fire. But I just don't want, like, a military state,
Yeah. It's kind of, I forget the film that I saw, but there was like some fucking movie that I saw like 10 years ago where there's a scene where a character is like, the military shows up at his house and he's like, what is this? I called the cops, not the government. Mm-hmm. It's like, how do you... People are so oblivious to that. They think that like there's a separation between the police and the military and government agencies. It's like, no, they are intertwined. One enforces the other and one is funded by the other.
I mean, aren't the police force like on paper, they are literally the executive branch, right? Like they are the front line of the executive branch of office of government. And people are just like, no, I love my cops. I hate the government, but the cops, I'm going to lick their boots clean, brother. That's what I'm saying. Like, it's so weird. And
yeah, okay, so another point that I want to make is like, a lot of people, they want to pay as little in taxes as possible because they say that taxation is theft. And I guess, like, technically you could argue that it is, but I would argue that it's sorry. I would argue that it's necessary. So even if you consider it theft, it's like, okay, well, we need this to fund all of these institutions that we have so we can actually keep things afloat and make sure people don't fucking die.
Right.
So yeah, but at any rate, like, you know, I've seen plenty of people say that, you know, taxation is theft and it's bad and yada yada. But then at the same time, they'll look the other way when it comes to civil asset forfeiture, which is essentially legalized theft by the police. They steal fucking billions of dollars worth of money and property annually.
Well,
And
maybe
this is not even like mentioned in mainstream discourse. People
maybe
just
those people should not. They shouldn't have had traces of weed on their clothes. You know, maybe, have you
I
ever
guarantee
thought
you
about
most of them don't. But you know, what do I know? Actually, there have been like plenty of instances of people who just have money at home. They're just like, they don't trust the banks or whatever, and you know, cops show up and they have a warrant, and they're like, why do you have like, you know, thousands of dollars in this, you know, box over here? It's like, well,
Yep.
that's my money. I've saved that. It's like, no, this is suspicious. We're gonna take this.
Oh yeah,
And
because
actually,
they think you're
getting
dealing
your
drugs.
yeah, usually, which is funny because, like, you know, Rockstar Games, at the beginning of San Andreas, you actually fall victim to civil asset forfeiture. The cops show up and they take your money, and they're like, "This is drug money," and they're like, "Don't worry, we'll fill it out. You never get it back. It's just it's gone. The cops have it now."
Oh yeah.
And
You know
even regaining your property, I just want to quickly mention, is a huge expense. So most people don't have the ability to do that, especially if like cops show up and they just took the money you've saved your whole fucking life. Let's say, well, how are you gonna possibly like fight them in court? And to a lot of people who, like, you know, go through with that and actually have the financial means to do so, it's not really about getting the thing back. It's more about the principle, and it doesn't have any effect on the actual like systemic issue. It's just like, okay, you can have this fucking, you know, car back that we took from you.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I actually had my car broken into once. It was a long time ago, and this is actually running contrary to your point, I guess, because it was real easy. The only thing they stole from me was a set of fitness DVDs, and initially they were like, "Yeah, you're probably not gonna get it back. It's really not easy to do, and you know, whatever." But I guess they ended up getting the shit back because it showed up on my front door one day, and I was like, "Oh well, thank you." But I really did not think that I'd get that back, and I don't think that's like the typical, that's not the typical experience from what I've heard. The only reason I brought that up is because it was like, oh, police story. It wasn't really relevant.
no, I think we're like using very like different examples. I'm talking about like cops stealing from you.
Well, right, but I'm saying like, I guess it's different. Sorry. No, when cops steal from you, thankfully I've never had that happen. Then again, I am a white guy, so you know, I'm probably not at high risk for that. But I guess more on point, what I like to say is when I was on that Jubilee episode and I was arguing with black conservatives, they talked about like the police and how people don't like the police, yada yada. And all I had to say was, most people, the vast majority of people, even if they say they love cops, every interaction they've ever had with a cop is a negative one. Because even when you're just
really
stopped on the road for speeding, it's like, God, this guy's stopping me. All I was doing was going like 5 miles an hour over the speed limit, usually more like 10 or 20, granted. But like I was going a little over the speed limit, I was late for work, whatever, and this guy's like getting in my way. I hate this. You know, it's always negative. I don't like that.
Not just that, but I mean, like, I mean, like, I was actually stopped by some cops a few days ago while I was working. I was heading back to like the storage facility where I pick up all the packages and shit. And after doing my routes, you know, some cops stopped me and they basically wanted to like see if I stole the bike that I was using, like the electric bike. And you know, I showed them the details. I was like, here's, you know, my delivery list. I have the keys to all these places. You know, here's the company that I work for, and they're like, okay. But even in a situation where I'm like providing all of these things that vindicate me from any suspicion, it's still an uncomfortable thing for me because I'm like, okay, well, what if they don't believe me? What if they start getting aggressive? You know, even in Sweden, like, you know, the cops that I dealt with, at least, they don't have body cams. They could just say that I got violent for no reason and take me in. Even if that's not like likely to happen to me because of, you know, my appearance, it's still a possibility, and it's still something that makes me nervous around cops. Like, even if I haven't done anything wrong at all, I'm still like on edge. So I can only imagine how like the average fucking person of color feels being around cops or being questioned by them.
Oh, absolutely. Another thing I brought up was like the talk, right? Like black communities, it's just a regular thing in their communities. Like they talk to their kids, like, listen, this is what these are the steps that you go through so that you don't get, shot by a police officer on account of your skin color. And that's ridiculous. How dare you say we live in the greatest country on earth while we have that shit going on, Like, it's just disgusting.
Yeah. It's horrible. I mean, the fact that that's like at least like somewhat common conversation that parents have to have with like their kid. It's like, here's how you avoid getting shot by somebody who's so like, who's supposed to protect and serve you and the community you exist within. Like,
yep.
This is but it's totally not indicative of like a larger systemic issue that we should address or be concerned with.
Of course
that's
not.
Pay no attention to the Klansman behind the curtain.
Right. One bad apple, right?
It's something that bothers me about that. It's like the saying is...
Yeah, I was just thinking
it's not like it's a few bad apples, so let's not do anything about it. It's a few bad apples spoil the bunch. So maybe you should like immediately address it as soon as like you see a bad apple.
Yep. Yeah, it's funny because there's sayings with like pull up your own bootstraps and one bad apple.
Literally impossible.
It's all contrary to like the actual idea, of like what the original saying was. I love that.
Yeah, I was just gonna say the etymology of that is it used to be used to like describe something that was impossible to do that people acted as though you could do.
Yep.
And now that's a thing. Now that's just like, yeah, that's just our saying. Pull yourself up by your fucking bootstraps.
Yep. Real quick.
So that's fun.
Going back to GTA, I want to bring something up because I played that as a kid. I think it was 5. When did 5 come out? Like 10 years ago or something?
2013, I believe.
So about 10 years. Yeah. So I was like a teenager playing that game, and I remember playing this game, and I would like kill somebody on the street and like steal their money, right? And you would maybe get like a 1-star rating from the cops, right? And they were like, oh, we'll chase this guy for a while, but then they like give up after 2 minutes as long as you keep your nose clean. You can literally get away with murder. But then the cops, you fucking tap a cop car and they'll like roll out the fucking helicopter. Like the chopper will be chasing you down the 75. Like, we have sight of the man who dented the squadron car number 74. He suffered a sprained neck, and we are going to eliminate the target. And I used to think, that's really unrealistic. I feel like murdering somebody should be higher ranking. But then I grew up to be an adult, and I thought about it, and I was like, oh, now it makes sense. I kind of like that now, because that's actually reflective of reality in a way.
And that's a thing in Bully as well. Like, you can beat the shit out of a lot of people your own age and size, and it's like a minor offense. Like, okay, if somebody sees you doing that and they're like a figure of authority, then you'll be detained or like they'll try to get you. But it's not that big of a fucking deal to them. Like, eventually they'll just be like, just stop. But if you just like accidentally, run into like a cop with, like a bicycle or something, it's immediately just like, get on the fucking ground, I'm gonna choke slam you. They literally choke slam you to the fucking floor.
Aren't you like a fetus in that game too?
15, yeah, so basically a fetus.
Yeah, but like they literally, there's footage of like them arresting preschoolers and shit with handcuffs, like in real life. So not surprising.
Speaking of that, like I guess like I think it was a year ago, I saw a video of there were like two teenagers fighting. One kid is white, one is black, and like the white kid is obviously like the more aggressive one. And it's like, really escalating.
Oh,
and eventually,
is that so obvious, Mr. Anti-White Racist? Sorry, go ahead.
Based on the video I saw, but okay, never.
No, I'm just kidding.
I know. Shit.
Sorry, he was the more.
As soon as the cops show up, they have like one of them runs over to the white kid and they're like, sit down, relax, stop, and the cops run over to like the black kid at the same time, and they're like, "Get down, fucking piece of criminal filth!" And
criminal scum.
Like, again, is this not a sign of something that we should be addressing? I mean, no, okay, it's all just a happenstance, and when it's not a happenstance, it's a bad apple. And by the way, when it comes to rotting fruit, you don't do anything about it. You just let it rot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and another thing is a common conservative talking point is, well, if they didn't want to get arrested, shit, they shouldn't have committed the crime now, should they? But then, like, a white kid does something. Like, let's take, what was it? What was his name? The guy who, like, crossed state lines and shot somebody.
What, Kyle Rittenhouse?
Yeah, Rittenhouse. Like, he does that shit, and then, like, there's... now, was it murder? I personally think that it was... In the moment, it was self-defense. The events leading up to it were bullshit, but in the moment, it was self-defense. But he did kill people. So it's like, you know, he needs to be taken in for questioning. These things need to be figured out. He should be held accountable if... Or not held accountable. He should be investigated. But everybody and their mothers were like, no, this kid is innocent. He didn't do nothing wrong, right? So...
But then, at the same time, they'll look at somebody like George Floyd, and they're like... They'll say he was no angel, and... By the way, like I've never heard anyone make the case that he was a fucking angel.
Oh, it
like,
gets
the
even
point
worse.
being made. The point being made is that, like, you know, people should not be suffocated by cops in the middle of the street in fucking broad daylight, or at all, for that matter. It should not be a thing that happens.
And the comeback to that is always, well, he overdosed. Okay,
but he didn't.
But let's say that's true. Let's grant them that he was overdosing.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. He still fucking died under the knee of a cop. Why were they not helping him?
In the custody of the police.
Right.
Which, by the way, like, when you're in the custody of the police, they're supposed to, like, provide you with emergency services if you require it, or if you ask for it, even.
Yeah, so it's like, there's no getting out of this. The police were in the wrong, 1,000%. No matter what way you cut it. And it's just incredible.
Really, like... Even if they detained the most deplorable fucking evil person ever, like I don't want to live in a fucking like RoboCop universe where, like, you know, immediately you're shot or killed by a cop on site if they just feel like it. I think there should be some kind of like innocent until proven guilty due process thing, maybe.
No, I agree. No, even if let's say that he were like the worst criminal on the planet who had been released, like he got away with like owning child porn or something, you know, objectively scum, right? It doesn't matter. That's not the crime he was committing in the moment. And the police do not have the authority to extrajudicially execute somebody. I don't want that. So if you want to dig into this guy's past and charge him separately with that crime, that's fine. But he has to be alive to do that, you know? So you don't just, like, you don't get to post hoc justify these killings just because the guy was a bad guy. I'm sorry, it's just not how the world that I want to live in, just like you said. So I agree on that point 100%.
And it's funny how, like, they keep doing this with black men getting killed by cops. For some reason, I don't know why. It's a huge fucking coincidence how this just keeps happening, how they keep justifying cops killing black men. I wonder why they're doing that.
And then you turn around, and then they'll turn around and be like, well, what about, well, who's that homeless guy who got shot by the police? Very famous one.
Oh, do you mean the guy, like, in New Mexico up in the hills? I
think so. He was, like, in a hotel or something. He was drunk, and the cops were giving him, like, 50 different orders that were all contradicting each other. And then they shot him. It was, I can't remember his name. Somebody in chat knows. But they'll turn around and be like, well, what about this white guy that they extrajudicially murdered? Huh? I never hear the leftists talk about that one. And it's like, well, first of all, they do. You know?
Yeah.
And second of all, that's also not okay.
Yeah, it's like, okay, so you agree, that's bad. All right, come to this side then. Let's just attack this issue.
Yeah, well, right. And it's never a problem until it happens to, like, somebody they perceive to be on quote unquote their side or whatever. AKA white, I guess. And to the extent that it is a problem, it's just that, oh no, that was a justified killing. We're just pointing out the hypocrisy of the left for pointing out killings of black people, which happens proportionally way more, just as a side note, and not harping as much about killings of white people, which also happens quite frequently. But it's like, don't you want to fix both of those problems, or like, I don't know.
I'd like to, but
personally,
I don't know. I don't know how like effective this would be, but I've noticed that when it comes to these kind of issues where we talk about double standards and how the judicial system or the the law in general applies differently to different people. One argument that I sometimes use when talking to like friends of mine about systemic racism is and I mean like friends of mine that are like doubtful in the existence of it.
of course.
Yeah, the argument that I'll make is that like, okay, well, and this depends on the person you're talking to, but this is usually something that I find. I'll tell them like, okay, well, you believe in there being a double standard for like men and women in the legal system. Like men tend to get harsher sentencing and
Yep.
yeah. So that's the thing that happens. It's been documented. We've seen it. You believe that it's a thing. I believe it's a thing. So like we agree on that. And they're like, yes. I'm like, okay. Is it not possible that the same thing could also be applied to like a black man, for instance, versus like a white woman? And it,
Right.
so like I can't promise that like this is something that'll like help elucidate that kind of point, but it's something that like I haven't really heard people mention as an example or use as an argument, but it's something that I've noticed with friends of mine at least tends to kind of like give them a little bit more perspective on it.
Well, it's a
If nothing
general.
else, if nothing else, it'll make them like pause for a second and think about it.
It's a general political incoherence. I'll give you another great example on a different topic. My cousin, his name's Joey. Great guy, love him to death. He is a really fun guy. He's just not very politically active, right? So we were having a little discussion, and his little brother's a crypto bro. But I digress.
You can't win them all.
Exactly. I love them all. Just they're a little weird, but Joey is not very politically engaged. So one time we were just having a discussion about like gay, like I think the gay bakery thing came up, right? Oh, should a bakery be obligated to make a cake for a gay marriage thing?
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, I hear you about like a church, or more specifically, we're talking about like, should a church be obligated to marry a gay couple, right? And in my view, if you are going to offer a service for one group of people and you are not going to offer the same service for another group of people, that should not be allowed, or at the very least, you should not be tax exempt, right? At the very least.
That's the point that I was going to make.
And he said, well, what about their religious beliefs? I'm almost done. And I said, okay, let's say it's a religious belief of mine that you're not allowed to have interracial marriages. Is that okay? Like, or like I can't have black people in my church. Like that's my religious belief, is that black people are the devil. And he thought about it for a sec. He's like, you know what? That's a really good point. And that was it. That was the end of that conversation. So, like once you point out these inconsistencies for most people, I feel like they actually understand like, oh no, you got a good point.
Yeah. See, that's kind of like the point that I was going for as well.
Yeah.
You can compare like and juxtapose these different groups and how they're treated and just kind of like highlight like, hey, here's my reasoning and here's why I object to this double standard. Do you see my point? And it's like, okay, yeah, sure.
Yeah. And you're right. They love talking about how men are fucked over in the legal system, which they are, absolutely. And then they'll turn around and just pretend like everything's fine as far as like race relations in the legal system,
Yeah. So I guess the point we're making is that like, use examples, compare and contrast. It's a fun time. You'll learn a lot.
Oh, yeah.
And it's this is something that also like convinced me personally of like the existence of systemic racism, because I was thinking about this and I'm like, well, I believe, men are sometimes unfairly treated by the legal system.
Yep.
That's possible for other groups as well. And I looked into it and I was, I read some statistics on it and I was like, okay, I guess that's a thing.
Oh,
now I know that.
Men are abhorrently treated by the legal system. It's terrible. They have it good in other regards, obviously. Don't get me wrong, but the legal system is so bad for men. Real quick, I want to give a shout out to Steel Lungs, who is making a return after being gone for a while. Welcome back. One of my first mods. Anyway, how long you got? I'm just curious, because we've been going for about an hour and 15.
I don't know. How long do you normally go for?
When I stream, I try to go for 3 to 4 hours. It varies. I think I'm probably going to go a good long time today, though. It's up to you.
Okay.
Because I can do other stuff.
If you're
too.
down, I'm actually really enjoying this conversation. So if you're down, I could be on for like another 40 minutes or so.
That'd be fantastic. I'd love to have you on. No, I've really very much enjoyed this. I was a little nervous, I'll be honest, but as soon as you were like, I watch people like Vosh and Kanye, I'm like, oh, thank God. He's not one of those, he doesn't got the VDS.
Yeah.
That's kind of, isn't it weird though? That's the kind of a litmus test of like, okay, is this guy really a lefty or is he just like a fascist in disguise, you know?
Right. Yeah, I don't know. Like, when it comes to Vosh, I mean, I find him entertaining. I think he makes some good points. There have definitely been instances where, like, I don't agree with him, but it doesn't bother me. I'm not going to, like, be upset by it. It's just
the same way.
a difference of opinion. It's like, if you actually compare, like, me and Vosh on, you know, most topics, you'll see that, you know, we're pretty fucking aligned. I mean, like, we have a lot of similar takes. And then it's like, okay, well, there's, like, just occasional points of contention on like some topics. Okay, well, so what? I mean, like, find me a single human being that, like, you know, you or anybody else is like totally in agreement with, like 100%.
Right.
You probably can't find somebody like that.
As far as Destiny goes, Alice McGee, because they don't know who it is, they're in the chat. Destiny is basically proto-Vosh, if I had to describe it. And if you don't know who Vosh is, I'll describe it more. Destiny is most famous for debating JonTron back in the day. I want to say that was like 2012-ish that he did that. And he's been on the internet for quite a while. He has historically been a very positive figure for the left, for leftist movements and talking points. Unfortunately, in the past few years, he's gotten very jaded, I think, with a lot of like the woke scolds, people who just like want, you know, it's my way or the highway kind of people. And he let that kind of morph him into this weird, I'm just in it for the money, I'm gonna say whatever I have to like be edgy kind of guy. It's really cringe, but that's who Destiny is for you. So I don't, like, if somebody says they like Destiny, I'm not gonna be the one to scold them for it, but you know, he's just not my cup of tea, I guess.
Right. Yeah, I saw you did a video on The Amazing Atheist, and yeah, like, I mean, I haven't seen the video, by the way. Like, I saw it, like, before I went on. I kind of checked your channel. I was like, okay, maybe I should prep a bit.
That's what I thought, too. Video, I was like, somebody reminded me in DMs yesterday. They're like, have you watched his videos? I'm like, oh, I guess I haven't.
Yeah, I'm really bad at that. Like,
same.
You know, even if somebody specifically tells me, they're like, okay, here's what we're going to be talking about, I'll, like, last second be like, oh, shit.
I'll wing it.
2x speed. Hold on. Yeah.
Same way.
But yeah, I mean, like, TJ, for instance, like, there are plenty of things that, like, TJ has said and done that, like, I don't feel good about. But, you know, at the end of the day, I mean, like, I've talked to him a little bit privately, and, you know, based on what I've seen over the years, I mean, like, I think he's an honest actor, at least. I think that he's at least, like, somebody with good intentions. Now, whether or not, you know, what he does results in something positive, that's separate. I mean, like, you know, we can talk about that, but do I think that, like, TJ's a bad fucking person? No, not at all.
No.
I think that, you know, I think he's an edgy guy with, like, you know, his heart in the right place.
No, I make a big point in that video. So basically, the synopsis of the video is, I love TJ. I think Amazing Atheist has done incredible work. Okay? You might say amazing work. He has debunked a lot of, like, Christian talking points. He continues to do that. And he's leaned into the leftist thing quite a bit. He's, like, tangential to Vosh kind of now. Not as popular as he once was, but still has a huge political pull, and that's important. And I want him on our side. The big problem that I have with him right now is he is kind of, not in the same way as Destiny, but he's kind of jaded. You know, like, he's tired. And I can see that, like, by the way he talks, the points that he has about voting and why he's tired of voting Democrat. And I think he's echoing a lot of people on the left, kind of their mindset, because I've seen that a lot lately. Is like, why the hell would I vote for Joe Biden when he hasn't done X, Y, and Z? I get it. The problem is we don't have a choice right now. It's either him or it's fascism. It is the loss of the ability to even have a democracy. So part of maintaining our rights as humans is defending democracy. That's the most important part. So if you cannot do that, if you just cede ground to the fascists, That's a problem. And so my biggest issue with him right now is he's on this don't vote for the Democrat stint. And he'll try to say like, oh, you can vote for whoever you want. But then he's objectively like, no, you guys don't understand. If we don't vote third party, then actually like you're just feeding the Dems more. You're just telling them that it's okay. And it's like, well, no. There's a lot of points I make in the video, but the bottom line is I don't agree with his take.
I'm sure it's difficult to like summarize a lengthy video in like 1 or 2 sentences. So I'll check it out later and I'll get an idea of what it's about. But
also, I was very angry that day, just so you know.
Okay.
So,
well, sometimes you got to do what you got to do.
Exactly.
But I'll check it out though.
Okay.
Well,
thank you.
Just as an example, like you mentioned VDS, so I was just kind of like giving another example of like, okay, well, here's somebody who like is highly controversial, like Vosh, somebody who has like out there opinion sometimes, somebody who like I enjoy watching, but not necessarily in agreement with at all times, but that's okay. Like there seems to me like I don't get like why there has to be so much fucking acrimony when it comes to like somebody having an unpopular opinion. Like even the video that I made on transphobia in GTA 5. I mean, I took a huge fucking hit in like, followers over that. My reputation was like fucking, damaged by that. And I'm like, okay, well, for years and years, people have like patted me on the back and been like, man, Sweg, you tell it like it is. That's what I like about you. You just speak your mind. And then when I do, and it's something that differs from what most people think or feel, then it's like, wow, you're just fucking beneath at this point. It's like, well, so like, okay, I should speak my mind up until it comes to a point where we might differ on a topic. Then I should just like not say anything at all because, it might hurt your fifis. And if that happens, then, I'm the snowflake.
Yeah, well, as somebody who used to be a conservative, I can't remember who said this. It might have been, it was either Vosh or it was like, I've been watching a lot of, who's that VTuber, political lady? Well, the avatar's a lady, the guy's a man. Nico Suris. I've been listening to a lot of him lately. And I think it was one of those two. They said, they don't want to hear other people's opinions. They want their own opinions echoed back at them. So that's how you have all these like Ben Shapiro's, even like PragerU, Joe Rogan to a certain extent. These are just like some guys that agree with everything that the viewer agrees with and just spouts it back at them. And they're like, well, see, I'm not a bad person. The other people are bad people for disagreeing with me.
I don't remember who said it, but there's a quote where it's the best way to lead the people is to follow them. And if you want to make it like as a political commentator, you basically have to live by that code, which is, as you point out, what, a lot of these organizations and people like, PragerU and Ben Shapiro and, Dave Rubin famously is known for. I mean, like even his own fucking audience is cognizant of him being, a total grifter. But it's a recipe that actually like results in you potentially making a lot of money and getting a lot of attention.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Who's that singer that just got astroturfed? You know what I'm talking about? The redheaded guy.
Oh, the guitar T-shirt.
Somebody in chat knows
guy.
Who. Somebody in chat knows who. So that guy had a song that was like populist, very populist is the word I'd describe it with, and he had sorry, my game. He had lyrics in it that were like implicating people who are on welfare, saying they need to quit eating the damn fudge rounds, right? And I guess I don't know if that's exactly what he meant because he backtracked a lot of that. Right. Or I guess I should say not backtrack, but tried to clarify it. And he seems like he just is very politically inept at what he does.
I'd say so too, because the thing is, at least like in the United States, I think about 70% of people on welfare actually do have jobs. They're just not being paid enough to live.
Yep.
So it has to be like it has to be
Oliver Anthony. Thank you.
Assisted by taxpayer dollars.
Yes, and when he came out to clarify that line, he was trying to say, well, welfare isn't doing enough. Like there are people dying. There are people who don't have food that they need. And it's like, well, dude, the line came off as though you were blaming them, my guy. So I still don't know what he meant. But the point that I'm bringing up is he didn't even understand the level to which he was being astroturfed. He was like signed on for some kind of deal, and they were like, "Oh yeah, no, we're gonna blow you up." Just sign. It was basically like one of those, devil with the big claws holding the contract. Just sign here, and all your dreams will come true. And he did. And so
yeah, that's actually what happened when I joined my YouTube network. So I am familiar with this.
Really? Oh, I'd love to hear about that.
Yes. Yeah. It was. I had to sign it with blood. So. That was fun.
Oh, you're being sarcastic. Okay. I thought you were. Oh, that's another question I have for you. So a lot of YouTubers and influencers have come out. I want to say, I can't remember his name. I'd never remember names if you couldn't tell.
Hitler,
probably. Yeah. No, it was some YouTuber who doesn't really do political content. It's just like, he was kind of like an iDubbbz type, but I can't remember his name. But he came out basically and was like, yeah, no, this conservative media outlet approached me for like a contract, and so and he made a TikTok about it, and he was like, it's very obvious to me from going way back, because he's been on YouTube for a long time, like which people took the contract deal, because they're very clearly not making the same type of content that they did. They leaned into this right-wing conspiracy bullshit, and it's very clear which ones of them took that money. And he said it's very sad. So, it is sad how much more money and influence they have because of the money.
Yeah.
So has that ever happened?
And
Have you ever been... Sorry, go ahead. Say what you're going to say, and then I have a question.
Okay, I think I know what you're going to ask, but we'll get to that in a second.
Sorry.
So I just want to give some credit to TJ again, because he was actually one of the many people who was like, kind of like offered this, maybe not this contract, but this opportunity, because he saw which way the wind was blowing, and he realized, hey, if I go down this like alt-right path, I could make a lot of money. I could like really become like a huge name. And he, he actually admitted to like considering it longer than he should have. But eventually, like, he backed out of it because he just realized like this is just disgusting.
Yep.
So I just want to quickly mention that, like, people have different opinions on TJ, but I do think that he deserves some credit for that, even though, he probably took a bit longer than he should have to back out of it, but he did, which is, more than what most people did.
Oh, yeah. No, I have a huge amount of respect for people, especially like Hunter Avalon. I have ungodly amounts of respect for what he did, and I don't even really agree with everything he says. He's really weird on like xenogender stuff. He's like convinced that it's hurting the trans community, whatever. But all that aside, he really did like a complete 180 from what he used to do. And I have unbelievable respect and admiration for that, because to walk away from that kind of clout and influence that he already had garnered and just watch as his views and his money, it all plummets. He went woke and he went broke, right? So it just plummeted, but he stuck with it because he is true to his word. He's an honest man, and he was an honest man even as a conservative. He believed all that stuff, but a lot of people don't, and it's clear. Because if you sit down and like really analyze it for more than 2 seconds or get challenged on it, and you just double down and triple down and quadruple down, you're not an honest actor. You are simply pushing your own agenda,
Yeah, and I do think that this is why you see so many conservatives who say that, like, oh, we're just, we're interested in the marketplace of ideas. And then as soon as like a prominent person on the left, like Kyle Kalinske or Sam Seed or what have you, somebody approaches them and says like, hey, let's have a fucking debate then. Let's have this discussion about the ideas we have. Mm-hmm. As soon as that happens, there's like a million caveats if they even agree to it, if they even acknowledge the offer.
Yes,
so it's just that. To me, that's indicative of like, do you actually believe in the thing you claim to believe in if you're not willing to defend the thing you say you believe in?
It is very interesting to me. I went on Twitter and I pointed out that like conservatives really don't, like prominent conservatives really don't debate any prominent leftists or left-leaning political figures anymore. And somebody brought up to me, because I asked like name one recently that happened. And to his credit, he was able to do so. He brought up Ben Shapiro and Anna Kasparian. And I was like, you're right. That was recent. Guess what else happened recently with Anna Kasparian? Just coincidentally. You know about all that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, isn't that weird? But that's a whole other thing. That aside, they really just do not want to talk to us. They want to keep a nice 10-foot brick wall around us or between us, right? Just like Squidward and SpongeBob. Like we can exist in the same space, but we can't talk to each other.
The most you'll see them do is, like I said, with Anna Kasparian, or they'll go to like a college campus and talk to a bunch of like inexperienced, socially awkward, teenagers.
Change my mind, yeah. The change my mind segments.
Yeah.
My favorite.
Yeah, or like they'll have somebody like walk up, have like a they'll be like, okay, Q&A session. Somebody walks up with a question. They're like, yeah, so when it comes to abortion, I don't really agree with the thing you said about it. And then like immediately, as soon as like they're done even saying one sentence, mic gets pulled away. They have no chance to like, interject at all.
Yep.
And they're like, we have to keep this brief. So, summarize this complex, nuanced issue in like a matter of 20 seconds. Go.
Well, and that's why I've taken to like this. When I was on Jubilee, I made a joke about, somebody said, one of them alluded to like, oh, these people just think anybody who disagrees with them is racist. And I was like, yeah, pretty much. Anybody who disagrees with me is just a racist. I just own it. Like, if they want me to like very briefly explain this shit, I'm not going to do it. I'll just be like, no, fuck you. Everything you say is wrong. I'm right. And you should listen to me without me having to argue it, actually.
You should have just like turned your head and do like the Chad profile thing and just be like, yes.
No, yeah. I did that because one of the questions, I'm giving too much away, but I'm not bound by anything. I can say it if I want, but just to spoil some of the video, which is coming out on Sunday, by the way. One of the things I said was, what was it? Oh, the question or the prompt was the first prompt. Liberals have a savior complex, right? And I agreed with it, with the prompt. I went and sat down, and when it was my turn to speak, I was like, no, I do have a savior complex, and I own it. I'm an order brother. I've always, wanted to be the guy who makes sure that people have what they need, that they can be taken care of. So yeah, I'm gonna save you whether you like it or not.
Cool.
And it's just like that's how you have to treat them now. It's like, yes, of course we're indoctrinating the kids. I want them all to be trans, 100% of them. And if you just really lean into that, they don't know how to respond. It's very disarming. It's really funny to watch.
Yeah. I guess you just like own it at that point. You're just like, yeah.
Yep. Yeah, of course I'm indoctrinating the kids.
Like, what do they do? Just like repeat the same accusation again? It's like, well, no, they don't. What else can they say?
Yeah.
But yeah, you had a question, I think.
Yeah. So I'm sorry. My question was: have you ever been approached by anybody like that? And if not, do you know anybody who was and turned it down, or who took it?
I can't speak for like people who I know because I don't know what their like personal dealings are. I don't have like any insight into like all the conversations friends of mine have, so I can't speak for that. But
fair enough.
I will say I have been approached, not with a contract necessarily, but I did make some videos that are like highly critical of some business practices by Rockstar, and I noticed that in different circles on the internet, like there's a website called Some Angry Gamer, for instance, which is like this kind of like far right. Yeah, it's like a far right leaning, gaming news brag thing. Yep. They found my videos and they're like, oh, this is really interesting, because they agreed with it. Not because of like, I never expressed like any like, race realism or anything like that. It was just like, Rockstar's being greedy and I don't like it. And here's why. Yep. Or like, their game is like broken, so they should fix it. That, that kind of thing. So they promoted some of those videos and I featured them in like, articles, and they followed me and all this. And then, I kept getting like, invites to like join, chats and add people on different social media platforms that were like, had like far right leanings, people, associated with a website. And over time, I just kind of realized that like there was like a little bit of a shift in my audience, because I assume some people from those kind of websites and circles, went over to my videos, saw them, liked them, and then started following. And I kept seeing more and more of like this, like one thing that I went through in my career or whatever as a YouTuber is I matured a lot. At least I hope I did. Or like, I would make like a lot of edgy jokes. I would, even like use, slurs, hyperbole, not like against people that they would normally be used against, but just like, edgy, just like, yeah, exaggeration.
Did you use the N-word?
I did. I did.
Oh no! Well, we got to end the call. No, I'm kidding. Go ahead,
Yeah,
please.
I figured.
Canceled.
But yeah, I mean, I noticed that more and more people in my kind of community started doing the same thing, but then at the same time they would also be kind of serious about it. And I'd be like, no, like the punchline for me is that, it's fucking weird that I would say this. That's the joke. And they're like, no, it's actually kind of based when you think about it. And I'm like, whoa, okay. So I
Okay.
saw this gradual shift in some of my audience where like it wasn't like the absurdity wasn't like the punchline became no, it's funny because it's true.
Now,
And
real quick, just to clarify, when you say a shift, do you mean more people, like new people, were coming in and acting like this, or this is an audience
Yes.
that you'd already? Okay, so this is new people coming in and saying this.
Mostly new people.
Okay.
Mostly new people. Although I did see some people in my community who like identified as conservative. Eventually, one of them is now like believes in like a global Jewish conspiracy to replace white people. So
Oh yeah.
People change over time, but I'd say like the majority of people that express these kind of opinions were new. So I saw that, I'm like, okay, I'm getting like this influx of people who hold these really out there, like basically neo-Nazi ideas. What do I do? Should I do anything? Can I do anything?
Just like,
And that's actually something that like led me to make the transphobia and GTA 5 videos. Like I wanted to basically just like make something that would repel those kind of people.
it's like when you bust open a spider egg by accident because you had to get one spider and just like, well, do I even do anything about this? Like, can I? Like, is this just over?
Yeah. No, they're all over the place.
It's funny.
All on me.
I just let him chill. Okay. But anyway,
Yeah.
keep going.
I have arachnophobia, so that's horrible.
Oh no! You won't like what happened to me this morning. Then my fiance literally told me, "Hey, there's a big ass spider web on our front door. Please be sure to duck if you go outside." I did not duck, so that sucked. Anyway, sorry, we're off topic.
Yeah. I deliver packages and stuff, so at least like 3 or 4 times per night, I'll walk in through a spider web.
Oh,
It'll just happen.
It's the worst. I hated it. Anyway,
And
you
the thing
gotta
is,
people.
it never gets easier. I'm not getting used to it at all.
I'm
It's just
so
it's
sorry.
horrible every time. So yeah,
I'm
that's
sorry.
fun.
I got to
But-
clean the spider web out of my mailbox. Anyway.
But I noticed this issue in my community, and I became concerned about it. And so, during the George Floyd protests, even I saw that one angry gamer, like their website, they had like a list of like traitors of America, where like they put some people on, like Legacy Killer HD for supporting the BLM protests.
Mhm.
And I told him, I'm like, add me to the list. It's a badge of honor for me. Let's just fucking go ahead, do it.
Hell yeah.
And like privately, they tried to like reason with me and be like, please, no, like you don't want, we can talk about this. And so I was like, what the fuck? Like, what is happening? Like, I don't know you. Like, what investment do you have in having me on your fucking side? And it occurs to me that like, it's not really about like me personally. It's about them having numbers.
Yep.
So they see somebody with a platform and they're like, oh, good. This is like, a way for us to reach more people with our message.
Yep. They want as
Which
many
is-
entry points as possible.
Exactly. So at that point, I was like, okay, fuck this. I'm just gonna like go all out and cut ties with people who have these kind of political leanings, because I'm not fucking comfortable with having this shit around me.
Yep. It sounds like very much like iDubbbz. Like what he went through.
Yeah, I've seen some of that. I haven't paid much attention to it, but I have seen some people on Twitter and such say like, oh, you used to make good videos, but then you became woke.
I think he's overcorrecting maybe a smidgen, but credit where credit's due. Like I had kind of a come to Jesus moment as well, back in 2020, and I also overcorrected, where I was like, oh no, we have to sit down and listen to, like, we have to let black voices speak, and I do agree with that message on its face, but that'd be like I'm not gonna sit here and cede ground to fucking Candace Owens. Clandis Owen, as we like to call her. So, it was like I don't want to speak over black people. I want to speak over Candace Owens kind of thing. And I kind of get that vibe from him right now. But overall, he's been phenomenal through that whole thing.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's interesting.
I guess I could see that though, because I mean, I have heard people on the left say that, like, we should not be critical of like what black people say.
Yep.
I'm like, well, I mean, at some point you're gonna come across somebody who's black who's just kind of like, rape all the puppies or whatever.
Yeah,
it's like,
or like even just black conservatives. They are exactly the same as white conservatives, and I would argue worse, honestly, because it takes more. Vosh put it like this: it takes more hurdles as a black person to reach the status of conservative. And so you have to be okay with a lot of really shitty things that you've personally experienced in order to come to that point in your life. And that's what makes them worse. And then on top of that, they have the whole identity thing that they can push in your face. Oh, well, as a black man, I actually hate black people and think that we should live in a white ethno state. And I'll leave too. Look at me. I'm even packing my bags. Look at how awesome and Chad I am as I lick your feet, black people or white people. And it's like really gross. So, and I know that sounds a little bit racist, but it's just true. Like, that's my experience with it.
I mean, like, people say that the left is like obsessed with diversity and shit, but it's also a thing you see on the right, but it's more tokenistic. It's like, hey, here's Milo Yiannopoulos, a gay conservative. See, we're not homophobic. Here's Candace Owens, a black conservative. We're not racist. And then at the same time, it's like, you see them go on and on about how, yeah, I as a minority, I as a gay or black person, should I really have the same rights and dignity as, other people? I don't know, maybe, probably not. And even justifying slavery. I mean, like, I saw Candace Owens doing that. I saw her justifying the genocide of indigenous Americans. I mean, there's no limit to which some people on the grift will go.
Well, and who better to do it than the most oppressed demographic besides like black trans women in all of America, right? If she were that, all she's missing is being trans, but because they want to literally eradicate trans people, they can't have that. They barely tolerate, like, what's her face, the person, the
Blair
woman,
White.
yeah, well, Blair White, but then also the woman who ran people over, literally killed them. What was her name? The former athlete.
Oh, Jenner. Forget her.
Caitlyn Jenner.
First name.
Caitlyn Jenner.
Caitlyn.
Yeah, they'll still call her fucking Bruce, and it's like they like. So anyway, my point is, like, they'll bring on these infringed minorities to talk about issues that, like, they'll bring on Candace Owens to talk about pro-slavery issues. They do it in every PragerU video. They get a black guy to talk about how actually racism taught people, or slavery taught people good trade skills. Right? They have a black guy do it. And it's so
that one really bothers me. Can I just go off on that for a second?
Please do.
Because it's like, could you not just teach people these valuable skills without owning them? Can we? No, there has to be like human misery. There's no way around that. It's not like you could just offer people like, hey, if you want to learn about this, come here. But no, it's sickening to me, because as you point out, they'll get somebody who's a part of the group that, like, they're basically sugarcoating the subjugation of, and here's a black guy talking about how slavery was, it was bad, I guess, maybe not, okay, fine, a little bit bad, but necessary, because without it, how would I become the great man that I am today?
Well, it's not even like that overt, usually. It has become lately. Usually it's more like,
it's
slavery.
Not literally that, but
Right.
Like,
but that's kind of where it's headed, right? Because usually it's more like, well, slavery happened, but like white people didn't invent it. That's one of the big PragerU lines, is that white people didn't invent slavery. And I've never heard anybody say that, by the way. But another part of it is modern day America, and I think the world over, really, but especially America, is so disconnected from the reality of what slavery was during those times. It wasn't just You wake up, you slave away for 16 hours, and then go to sleep. Which, to be clear, that did happen, and it was disgusting. But even worse than that is they were raped. You know, they were murdered on site, and nothing happened to them. They were
What was it?
tortured.
Was it Washington or one of the founding fathers was actually like known for raping their slaves?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think
which one.
Yeah, Washington. That sounds right. You could disembowel a black person in front of their entire family, and nobody would care. Like, it was terrible, terrible, and people just don't remember, or they don't care. And they're trying to water down the idea. Oh no, slavery was just like a trades program, bro. It was just like an unpaid internship, bro. Like, they learned valuable skills. No! These people were tortured. What? It's insane.
It's disgusting. I don't know what else to say about it. I mean, like it just goes on. And as I said, there's no limit.
But then as long as you get a black person to talk about that, it's fine. That it was okay and cool and fine.
Yeah.
You know,
I don't know, for some reason, like a clip of Dennis Prager just came to my mind. Didn't he say something along the lines of like, the left have made it impossible to say the N-word? It's disgusting.
And so we were talking about conservative grifters. Yeah, Candace Owens, and like I was saying, like they'll always do the whole tokenization thing, like way before liberals or leftists do. So that was my whole point in bringing that up. But we talked a little bit about those guys approaching you. Mm-hmm. That's really interesting because I've heard that that's happened, but I've never actually talked to somebody that it's happened to. Have you ever gotten like huge offers for like huge amounts of money or anything?
No. So I think like with a lot of those kind of things, I would expect that they kind of wait and see how you act if you play ball, if you know you're willing to kind of push the line that they want you to push. Mm-hmm. If I started putting out videos where I'm like, well, you know, force diversity in video games and blah blah and woke, and you know, I posted like, you know, thumbnails with like the merchant meme with like Rockstar covering the face of it or something. I think then, you know, maybe I would have gotten some offers because they would have realized like, hey, this guy is leaning more and more towards what we want.
Right.
But I never went that far. I mean, like I was just like an edgy fucking, you know, late teens, early 20s kind of dude, you know, who eventually grew out of it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people go through that phase, and I think that the left has a huge problem with appealing to types like that. Leftists sometimes have a victim complex as a community, where it's like, you know, I understand that young white men are not exactly the most disenfranchised group, but they are still human beings with problems. And if you don't recognize that and like reach out to those people and appeal to them, they're just going to become mini Ben Shapiro's and mini Joe Rogans to some extent, Jordan Petersons and all that.
Well, you also have to keep in mind that even, you know, privileged people can still have emotional issues or challenges. I mean, like, we know that wealth and fame doesn't necessarily make a person happy. We know that, you know, a lot of famous and rich people, like celebrities, they have addictions and different vices, and that's the thing that happens. Likewise, you can look at like, you know, white men, and you'll see that they actually have the highest suicide rate, despite being privileged in a lot of ways.
Yep.
So people have to be aware of that, I think. And it's really easy to look at a group of people and say, well, you know, they're privileged in a lot of ways, so they're probably fine. It's like, not necessarily. Like, again, we're talking about maybe not like young men have the highest suicide rate, but they have among one of the highest. Isn't it like the highest one, like, you know, white middle-aged men, I think?
Say that one more time, the last part.
Don't like middle-aged white men have the highest suicide rate among like all the groups of people? Yeah, so this is often something that's overlooked. And I think, do we have the ability to acknowledge privilege and at the same time address, you know, these kind of challenges? I think we do. We just don't pay enough attention to it.
Well, everyone wants everything to be very simple. You know, like, okay, if we're handling other people's problems, then mine are not being addressed. It's very black and white for a lot of people. And you have to kind of work within that framework. I think you were mentioning earlier something about like, what'd you say? A great quote of the best leader is a good follower, right?
Yeah, the best way to lead the people is to follow them.
Yes. And I agree with that to a certain extent. You know, you have to be able to meet people at their level, where they're coming from. And as a former conservative, I feel like I have a leg up on a lot of people in that regard, because there are a lot of people who were just kind of born into a liberal or leftist family that I've noticed don't understand why somebody would think like a conservative or believe the things that conservatives do if they're not like cashing out or if they're not trying to trick people. You know, there are a lot of genuine people out there. Like, just look at Hunter Avalon, for instance. He genuinely believed everything that he was saying and changed for the better. I genuinely believed everything that I was saying. And a lot of these young men who are not financially or even clout-wise gaining anything out of these beliefs do genuinely believe them, and you can't just brush them off. You know, there's a lot of them. So it is good to have people like you, you know, somebody with almost 300,000 subscribers who makes gaming content, believe in these things, because even if you don't overtly, you know, put political content into, politics into your content, you know, it still leaks through and it influences people in a very indirect way. And I think that's very good. And I hope that you continue to do so. Because like you said earlier, those little quips that you get are fantastic. I heard a few of them.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, it's not something that I focus a lot on, but it's something that I mostly do because I enjoy doing it. I like speaking my mind. So if I can just like sprinkle in some social commentary here and there and just kind of slip that by, you know, maybe somebody will pay attention to it and actually give it some thought. But main thing that I do is gaming, so like I have to prioritize that. But I do think, you know, I can chew gum and talk and walk at the same time.
No, I prefer that. I like. Let me give you another good example. Somebody who's far more prominent than either of us, Moist Critical. He is not a political guy. I don't know how much thought he actually gives it at all. But he's genuine, and he is a good person. And that's all you need to be in order to break down a situation and end up on a leftist side. You know what I mean? So like, let me look back. I know I've seen some recently. Let's see, there was I Don't Like Him. He talks about like companies and corporations like being really mean. Oh yeah, I just watched This Creep is Disgusting. He uploaded it 5 days ago, and I'll show the chat real quick. So This Creep is Disgusting. And it talks about
name.
Yeah, no, he's great at titling and whatever. But it talks about how the president of like some sports organization literally fucking kissed this female soccer player, like grabbed her head and pulled her in for a big sloppy wet one. And
yeah, that's
disgusting. And so there are people defending this guy, and he's like, what the fuck? No, this is assault. You understand this is sexual assault, guys, right? And just being a decent person and being able to break these things down, that, I hate to say it, but that is leftist messaging, right? It's simple, but it is.
And even if people don't consider it as such, it's at least something that's obviously necessary, because you have this huge amount of people that look at this and they're like, well, you know, yeah, he grabbed her without consent and kissed her.
Right.
In front of a bunch of people and made her fucking really uncomfortable. But, you know, traditional values, yada, yada, whatever, shrug. No, you don't grab a bunch. You don't do this to people. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if it's a man or a woman or NB or anything.
Oh yeah, no, I've been grabbed and kissed before by a guy. Like I didn't like it, you know.
You know, it reminds me of like how oftentimes with straight dudes, you'll see them be like super uncomfortable around like, you know, gay guys. They're like, what if he grabs me and fucking, you know, squeezes my ass or like, you know, hits on me? It's like, how do you think women feel?
But that's projection. That's projection, because they know that they would absolutely do that to a woman.
Yeah. And also, I think some of it is a different type of projection. I mean, like sometimes it's, you know, me thinks thou doth protest too much. It's like when you hear somebody be like super homophobic and they're like, man, being gay is disgusting. And then like a year later, they make a Facebook post. They're like, I'm gay. I'm tired of hiding it. It's like, okay, good for you. But like, you could have done that without the overt homophobia.
Well, that's complicated. There is like kind of a trope, which rings true in a lot of cases, of like closeted, I almost said homosexuals, closeted gay people coming out later and being like, yeah, I was gay the whole time. You know, like
it's human psychology is complicated, so I don't pass a lot of judgment there. But like when it comes to people in positions of power who like legislate or, have congregations of people who then push homophobia and who then, get caught in a motel with like, a 15 male hooker gangbang. I mean, like at that point, yeah, I'm going to judge that person for being a fucking hypocrite, not for being gay. But, the bigotry itself there, I can't really excuse it or like understand it, because then it's like, okay, well, it's not just insecurity at this point. Like, you've participated in oppressing other human beings to make yourself feel better. That's what a bully does.
Well, right. And a lot of what conservatism is, what are they conserving? They are conserving the hierarchy, right? White men, specifically cishet white men, and I'm not saying that as a group they are cognitively aware of this, but if you're buying into the conservative propaganda, cishet white men see themselves at the top of this hierarchy and they want to maintain that. If they're around women and they want to be able to touch them, grab them, do whatever they want with them, and that should be fine, that's just boys being boys, right? That's one thing. But then if they're like in their heads, okay, if I'm around a gay guy, he's going to want to do that with me, and I don't like that. That's what I meant by projection. Is
right.
They're just giving the game away.
It's a very like heterocentric kind of way of overlooking that, thinking that like, okay, well, gay men might do that and that's a problem and that should be judged, and we should frown upon that. But when I as a straight guy feel like doing that, that's like whatever. That's just like you said, boys being boys.
Yep.
Who gives? Yeah, goyles were goyles and men were men.
Yeah. So that's kind of what I meant by that. Yeah, every accusation is a confession, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, that's the way it goes.
Is there anything else you wanted to talk about? Anything else?
No, I wanted
to
to thank you for bringing me on. I guess like before I take off, I don't know how much time we have for this, but I'd be kind of curious.
As much as you want.
Well, you mentioned being formerly like conservative. For me, it's I grew up in like a household where people from all kinds of political aisles shared the same house as me. So like my mom used to have like, she's identified as like an anarchist. Some of my brothers, they had like more conservative views. Some of my other relatives, they were like liberals, and so on. So for me, I don't think I was ever conservative. I think I just kind of like, as I adopted political views, they just became more apparent that like they generally are lefty. So I didn't really have like that kind of like experience where I went from one side to the other. So I am curious on like how that happened.
That's a great question.
Like, what was that like? Because to me, that's totally foreign to me.
The interviewer has become the interviewee.
Yeah.
Okay, so I grew up in a conservative German Catholic household, and I live in Ohio in the United States, which has a big population of Germans. Or I guess, lineally, they're German. My dad's first generation American. He came here as a Catholic. My grandma on his side was a cloistered nun after his dad passed. So he was huge into, and still is huge into religion. He's kind of swayed a little bit. Like he's, doesn't go to church every Sunday like he should, but he brings that up all the time. But he's very religious. So I grew up in that environment. I was kind of forced to go to church all the time. It was, I didn't have any like overtly abusive experiences like in the church itself, like a lot of people have. There were a lot of I look back and there were a lot of weird rules that I followed and a lot of weird things that my parents did that weren't right. Like my mom would yell at us like, "You're going to go to hell if you do this," right? She wouldn't let us lock our doors. She, was convinced that we never were able to keep secrets from her, and if we did, then we would deserve to be punished for it. Stuff like that. There was a very strict hierarchy going off of age in that house.
Right.
And I always hated that. So, but I did still buy into a lot of the conservative narrative, I'm mostly straight. I'm bisexual, but for all intents and purposes, I'm pretty straight. And so it never really occurred to me that like, I didn't have issues that other people have, I'm just a cishet white guy, kind of going about my business and being raised conservative. My big issue was abortion. I was convinced that I would never be flipped on abortion. It was killing a baby, period, end of story, and that's it. Well, then I got my college girlfriend pregnant. And
I was just going to say, like, that's oftentimes the way it goes.
It is, unfortunately. You don't really understand the implications of your worldviews until it slaps you in the face. Now, to be fair, up until that point, I went to a Jesuit high school, which is a religious private school. But here's the thing. The Jesuits historically have been known for being pretty liberal, right? For being pretty progressive. Even as far back as like the 1800s, they were fighting for queer rights, which is awesome, right? Very interesting stuff. So I went to a Jesuit high school, and they really forced us to question like why we believe what we believe. Despite telling us that, yeah, God exists, this is what we stand by, they were like, but we want you to question it. We want you guys to come to your own conclusions. You know, we don't want you leaving this Christian because we told you to be Christian. We want you leaving
so
this...
like they actually encouraged you to like educate yourself?
Yes, it was a high quality private school, which is not common. But it was. Incidentally, it was all boys school. So it could have been...
Okay.
I wish it had been co-ed, but whatever. In any case, they did teach us very good values, and it started me off starting to question this stuff, like what is God? Why does God save some people and not others? Why does, we talked about 9/11, for instance, like why did God, there are some people who became atheists because of it. There are some people who went from atheism to Christianity because of it, because God saved my loved ones, right? Okay, but why does he pick and choose, right? And so they really challenged us on this stuff. I took a class called Question of God, which does not happen in private schools. But it happened in mine, which was awesome. So I took that elective, and it really challenged my views. And that's when I started like becoming more independent, more apolitical Andy kind of guy. And then I met my college girlfriend. I was still very fervently pro-life. Met her. She was not pro-life. She was pro-choice, but we never really talked about it much until she got pregnant, of course. And then her plan was to break up with me and deal with it herself. Didn't let that happen. I managed to kind of pry it out of her a little. I didn't like abuse her or anything, but she like tried to meet me and break up with me. And I'm like, what's going on? Because she was acting weird. So I figured out that she was pregnant. I helped her pay for the abortion, and I've never still told my parents to this day, because my dad has straight up said that he would disown me if I told him. So, or if I ever like did that. So I kind of had an emotional crisis for a long time. It was that combined with the fact that I also broke up with her shortly thereafter because she threatened to tell my parents about it. So it was a whole like thing. Yeah. So, and then I met Katie, who's the love of my life. I love her to death. And she's also non-binary, and she has a lot of like queer friends. And that helped me kind of solidify what I currently am. In 2020, I very much went down like the communist rabbit hole. My sister kind of fully brought me into leftist spaces and got me thinking about this stuff. And I started looking at the world more objectively, because I remember I listened to a podcast where they were reading Karl Marx's Das Kapital, or Capital, right? Sure. And they kind of did a synopsis of it. And he went over like his whole theory of labor value, which kind of opened my eyes. It was like, it sounds funny, but it was like the man being dragged out of the cave allegory, where I had that moment and I was like, wow, he's right. This is how the world works, right? So I took that to heart, and I started really critically analyzing the stuff that I was watching and the stuff that was happening in the world, and coming to this understanding that like nothing that I believe is correct. Like abortion, even if you don't like it, even if you do believe it's a human, if you want to stop it the way, and I do want to stop it, just to be clear, like I don't want abortion to have to happen very often, but if you want it to happen less often, then you have to like ascribe to leftist values. But that's kind of how I came to what I am now, is my sister really pulled me. She made the final push, and then I found Hassan, started watching him. And then there was this whole thing with Vosh where I wouldn't touch him with a 20-foot pole, and now I like Vosh better than Hassan. It's a whole thing. But anyway, that's my journey.
It kind of sounded like a come to Jesus story. Like, then I found Christ, but instead of that, you're like, then I found Hassan.
Pretty much. Because before that, it was The View, I think, or no, The Hill, not The View, The Hill.
I was just gonna say the View, isn't that like with Sharon Osbourne?
That is Wine Mom Central. No, it's It's The Hill, which is not it wasn't the worst like compared to what I was watching, but then I found Hassan and I'm like, okay, this is much better. And he kind of leveled me out. So, I don't agree with Hassan on everything, but he's a good boy.
I mean, he's cool. I don't watch him that often, but occasionally I'll like see him react to some true crime stuff or do a debate or whatever.
Yeah. He's fun.
I kind of wish like I had an interesting story like that. I mean, like, of course you went through a lot of like really painful stuff, and I'm sorry about that, but I'm saying? Like, I wish my story was more interesting, because I grew up around people with like different views. Mm-hmm. And this includes like religious views. Like my mom, she's like, kind of ping pong between being, agnostic and like super devout Christian. And at this point, like, she went from being a born again Christian to like agnostic, kind of center left, and now she's like super conservative, almost far right Christian. So that's fun.
Okay.
But I think like my family generally leans liberal. You know, I do have like a cousin who went through like a communist kind of phase, but yeah, overall it's like center right to center left ish. So it's basically middle shit. But I don't know. I didn't really go through anything significant. I just kind of talked to people, and of course the people that I follow that I watched, they influenced me. Like, you know, of course Carlin had a big influence on me on, you know, my perspective and some of the like kind of absurdist, cynical takes that I have.
Right. It does provide, I do think I have a unique outlook because of it, because people like Hassan, he was always liberal. Vosh, he was always liberal. I wasn't. Nico Suris, another one that I like very much, smaller content creator, but I'd give him a look. I say her because his avatar's a girl. It's confusing, but I would give him a look because he's a cringe VTuber, but he's very cool. I like him a lot, and he actually came from a cult, so very interesting. Same with Demon Mama, if you've ever heard of her, trans woman who came from a cult.
I have.
Yes.
I saw a convo she had with TJ maybe like a year ago.
Yeah, Demon Mama's great. Don't agree with everything again, but she's great. So, you know, having these interesting outlooks does help. I think the strength that you, and by the way, I'm very flattered to hear that somebody with 300,000 subscribers on YouTube wants to be more like me. That's very nice. But the things that you bring to the table are going to be different. That doesn't make them less valuable. It's just different, right? It doesn't have to be your personal experience. What you bring to the table is you're a gaming creator, first and foremost. And people see that. And if they're like politically inclined toward the right, and then they get to know you and they like your content and they see these little things that you're sprinkling in of like, oh, like actually, this is how I feel about this. And, you know, maybe put in a little bit of a political message that kind of goes under the radar for most people. That's valuable. That's insanely valuable. Like, I don't think you realize what a great opportunity that in itself is. Like, in some ways, I wish I could do that, but I've already delved headfirst into the politics, so I don't have that asset anymore. We all bring different things to the table, so.
I think that's a fair point, and I appreciate you saying that. There's like, you know, on the topic of like, you know, being influenced and changing your mind by the things we see and experience. I will say this, one positive thing that came out of the transphobia in GTA 5 debacle would be that, like, and I found out about this recently. I was told by a follower of mine. It's a non-binary femboy on Twitter who told me that they used to be like, you know, alt-right, kind of like, you know, incel type. That video and the way in which I responded to the backlash by like bringing people on to talk to them live and just, you know, have like a back and forth. It actually, they say that it did push them to the left, and they ended up like finding people like Xander Hall and Vosh and checking them out. So if nothing else, at least like, you know, I can take credit for creating a communist femboy on Twitter.
That's excellent. Very nice. Hey, we need to win all the femboys over, okay? The conservatives are not allowed to have them. They're so entitled to our gender non-conforming femboys. That's ours, okay? They don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm just concerned with, you know, maintaining capitalism and the development of technology. So, you know, by selling more programming socks and thigh highs to femboys, I mean, like, we're gonna fuel that. So yeah, it's a guaranteed win. Yeah. So like when people get upset, you know, I'll just tell them like, hey, don't you love capitalism? I mean,
free market, baby. I was just listening to Sam Cedar. He and his goons were talking about the sex work industry. And it's like, well, you know, sex sells. Like, if you're so mad at OnlyFans girls, maybe you should try to market to those people with something they like better than porn, you know? They love the free market until the free market turns against them, man. They are not principled people.
Yeah, or until like they see it on say Twitch. They're like, you know, look at all these boob streamers. It's like,
yep.
Well, I don't I never understood like why people care, because I never go to the front page. I just follow people and that's it. And
That's
even if I
my
go to the
thing.
front page and I see something on there that I don't like, which is like 99% of it anyway, I it doesn't bother me. I'm just like, oh, okay. Well, fuck this. I'll
Right.
just check something else.
Right. It's like that's my thing is I like don't watch it. Like, okay, I get that you're upset for no reason, but I don't care. You know, stop crying about it. I was just gonna say, like I said, they love the free market till it turns against them and their personal values or whatever.
And we're seeing this right now with like the woke messaging in Red Dead Redemption 2 and such.
Yep.
So that's the thing. But again, I want to thank you for bringing me on. I really enjoyed this conversation. If you want to have me on in the future, let me know. We'll get that set up.
Absolutely.
One thing that I would actually suggest, at least like considering, would be like, I have a friend of mine that I used to do a podcast with.
Really?
She goes by Lady Hopium. She's like a lefty trans woman on YouTube who does like streaming and stuff. I think like maybe you could have an interesting conversation with her, because me and her, we're actually pretty fucking alike on a lot of political topics. So you might get like an interesting conversation out of that. She doesn't have a huge audience or like a bigger audience or anything like that, but I do think that it's healthy for streamers to exactly that's her.
Yep.
I think it's healthy for like people in this community we're in to like kind of have conversations with each other and kind of like share platforms and stuff. So
I agree. There's a guy named Greycraft that I do stuff with, and he's like even smaller than Lady. Not to shit on him, he just doesn't have as many subscribers. You know, I'll work with anybody who wants to work together as long as it's like reasonable, or if they want to come on stream sometime, I'll set something up. Like I love the idea of promoting smaller channels, and the fact that I can even say promoting smaller channels at this point is something I'd never be able to say. I'm still not huge myself by any stretch, but anybody who wants to, big, small, whatever. I just reached out to you primarily because I'm trying to clout shark you, but also because you did seem like a genuine guy, and I love the idea of talking to people who don't do political content but are nonetheless political, whether in their personal lives or on other social media that they do, and seeing what they're about, what makes them tick, and like how that influences their content, and how that content then goes on to influence other people, and kind of act as I said, like an entry point for a lot of this stuff. So you're doing great work. I'm not personally into Rockstar stuff, but like I'm not into Minecraft or Fortnite or anything like that either, and we all feel our niche. So I really appreciate you coming on today. If there's anything else you want to add before we log off here, feel free.
No, that's about it. Thank you again. If you want to, I could talk to her name's Emily. I could ask her like if she's down to go on your show or whatever. She actually did have a conversation with Demon Mama at one point. So
I feel like
she is
there was a 25, if I had to guess her name, there would have been a 25% chance of getting that right. I know so many trans women named Emily.
Yeah, I think Alice is another common one.
It is. Sorry,
go ahead. In all fairness, I do think that like trans women tend to have cooler names, albeit maybe there should be a bit more variety in them, but nonetheless, they're good fucking names.
Let them have what they want. I think the big thing with trans people is they're not like, if think about this for just a second. I know we're about to end, but like think about this. If trans women really are just out there for the attention, why the fuck do they all share the same 5 names? Why don't they call themselves like star something comet 467 like on their birth certificate? Like if they're really attention seeking, they're not doing it right. They suck at it.
Okay, but like how many times have you like seen a comment section full of like a bunch of like, young incel dudes, and like half of them are like Skull Crusher 89, Anime Fan 5,
Yeah, it's so odd. But anyway, sorry, that was besides the point. She seems I'll have to watch her content, but I would love to talk to her, and based on our conversation, if you endorse her, I would very much love to speak to her, because this has been a huge delight. I was a little worried about it because I don't do this a whole lot, but you've proven that, this was a great idea, and I would love to speak to you more in the future and maybe game together if you ever are down for it.
Sure. I just got to get situated with my job and all that. I'm still new. I'm still getting used to it and adjusting to the schedule and all that. But as soon as I'm able to, I'll let you know, and we can make some plans.
Absolutely, man. Hey, I had a great time. I had a great conversation. If you want to just say your name one more time and whatever else you want to say, we'll go ahead and log off.
No. Okay.
Okay. You don't have to.
It's SWEGTA, so it's SWEGTA. You can also follow me on Twitter. Sorry, X. I don't know. I call it Twitter. I don't.
Are you dead naming the platform? No, I'm kidding.
I literally am.
Everyone still says Twitter.
Yeah. But yeah, you can follow me on there. It's SWEGTA. Again, thank you for having me on. I'll talk to Emily later and see if she's interested. She actually went through like a bit of like a conservative path for a while. So I think unlike me, you would actually be able to like relate a little bit when it comes to like how you've changed over time, because I'm basically where I'm at, where I started, but just a bit more left. So
we all have our journey.
Center left to like, yeah, I went from like center left to like more left, but still kind of centrist-y, I guess.
Well, I am working for a world where that's the default, so just keep that in mind.
Okay, well, thank you for having me on. I'm gonna take off. I love your chat. They seem cool.
Well, thank you. I love them too. You take it easy as well. Thanks so much again for coming on.
All right, peace.
If you're watching this on YouTube, thank you so much for watching. Please be sure to hit the like button if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe if you want to see more. Hit the notification bell to be notified when I upload. You can join my channel membership at youtube.com/AlecGunther/TTV/join for only 99 cents a month. That's less than the price of a blowjob from your mom. You can be part of the channel membership program and you will get early access content, as well as a sweet badge next to your name and exclusive emojis in the comments that nobody else gets. Thank you again, and I will see you all in the next video.